Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends. I'm so pleased to be here and so pleased to have this opportunity to expound on my favorite subject, the monetization of silver. I want to tell you that I've always had, since I was a child, I've had an interest in monetary matters, especially gold. When I was about 10 years old, my father had a lottery ticket that won a small prize. Well, it wasn't such a small prize. It was 100 pesos. And he said, well, I'll give you the 100 pesos. What would you like to have? What would you like to do with 100 pesos? I said, buy me some gold coins. That's what I want. So each one of those gold coins was worth 10 pesos. So I got 10 little gold coins. There were 2 peso coins, the smallest denomination in Mexico. Tiny little coins about the size of your small fingernail. Said 2 pesos on them. They had, now I know, they had 1.5 grams of pure gold in each one, and I got 10 of them, and that was my first acquisition of gold, and I hoarded those until my wife Esther and I were married. I still had those coins, so that just proves that the velocity of circulation of gold is 0, as Antal would say. Well, when we had a debacle, the last debacle, or the most recent one, not the last one, the most recent one that we had in Mexico was in 1995, and I said, well, what the heck, this is happening over and over, what the heck is going on? And I got trying to get to the bottom of the thing. Well, I happened to have at hand one article by Michael Belkin, whose name should be familiar to you, and it said, well, Mexico's run into trouble again because it's been borrowing short and lending long. That rang a bell. And so I picked up from my library a little pamphlet with an excellent content and written by none other than Antal Fekete. Borrowing short and lending long, illiquidity and credit collapse. That was the title of that pamphlet, published by CMRE, Committee for Monetary Research and Education, headed by Elizabeth Currier. And so, reading that again, and reading Michael Belkin, then the inspiration came to me. It's silver. We've got to put silver we've got to make a move from paper to silver, which has been our traditional Mexican money. But we're never going to get out of this mess. And I began to, slowly, other intuitions began to come in. I don't know how. I can't explain the process of intuition. How it is that all of a sudden, after thinking so many years about these problems, the problem began to unfold before my eyes, and I discovered something for myself that Jacques Rueff had discovered many years before, but I hadn't been aware of that. I discovered it for myself, really, and I feel rather satisfied that I got to that on my own, and that is that the United States is flooding the world with paper which is accepted as payment, but it's not really a payment because it's not a good, it's just a paper, but it's accepted as payment. And in return for that, the world sends the United States a veritable flood of goods. And that is nothing but else but a kind of exaction of tribute. It's exaction of taxes on an immense scale. That can't go on. That is not going to go on. And the only way, I think, to put a stop to this distortion of the world is that we should eventually return to a system where value for value. If if you're paying for one thing with a value, you must get something else in return. Also, I subscribe to Antal's real bills doctrine. I think it is a necessary adjunct to gold as a clearing system. But I also think that we must attempt to bring back the use of precious metals. And I do not think that we can do that by just returning to the Constitution. So I just don't think it can be done. I do not think that any decree or worldwide agreement on returning to gold is feasible, because it would simply kill the world's economy as it is overnight. It's like a drug addict that is absolutely hooked on heroin, and he suddenly withdraws or is not provided with the heroin. He'd probably like to die from it. He may die from the shock, and that is what may happen to us. So I don't think that it's possible. I don't really know how we're going to get out of this mess. That is a mess that is going to bring an awful lot of pain, but I think that we should do something that we can use as a palliative. We need a palliative. We're going to need something, and that is why the reluctance of central bankers around the world to think of gold or silver as money is going to be overcome. There's going to be a change in attitude when the frightening, terrifying disaster finally strikes upon us. Then there is going to be a change of mind, and that is when I think that this idea of how to introduce money into circulation, silver and gold too, into circulation in parallel with paper, will become attractive. The masters of the world are the bankers at the present time, and I don't know for how long they will continue that way, but I think we have to recognize that they are in the catbird seat, at least for the time being. And when are we going to dethrone them? I don't know. But I think that perhaps we should think that the bankers themselves feel trapped. The central bankers feel trapped. The politicians and the rulers, the civil rulers, also feel trapped. And nobody is thinking. Nobody knows exactly, well, what can we do? Nobody is thinking. Nobody is trying to find a way out. They're just, the people who are in power are coping with a situation which they have inherited, but they're not contributing anything to a resolution, because none of them feels capable of doing something. They are earning a wage, they are looking for re-election. They don't have time to think of something that will ease the situation. This is what I'm offering. We're offering a way out that won't be a panacea, but it will be a palliative. And if those who are in power recognize that this is an attractive palliative, that the people like it, that the people have confidence in it, that it brings goodwill from the people, that it brings re-election, then they will perhaps offer more and more and more until the palliative becomes an important factor in the economy. Well, now I'll be getting now into my main theory. What happened over the last 100 years? I won't go back further because we don't have time. What happened over the last 100 years? The precious metals were pushed slowly by a series of measures, and by the consequence of the previous measures and other measures that came one upon the other. What happened was that paper money, which was originally the auxiliary, the helper of real money, gold and silver, the servant grew and grew and grew and finally overmastered his master and threw him out of the house. So now the servant, paper money, completely unrelated to any precious metal or anything else, is now the master of the house. This project is the first attempt, to my knowledge, in 100 years, the first attempt to bring back the master into the house. Now the master, gold and silver, he's going to come back into the house in a humble disguise. Yes, just like paper came in as a humble disguise. It's easier to fold money than to carry around heavy coins. So he's coming back in a humble disguise as an auxiliary. Just a little bit, you know. It's not the whole thing we want to change, just a little bit. Then that's the way I think it's called incrementalism. Just a little slice. That's all we want. And try it. Try it. I've heard this. I've heard this in the Congress. I've heard the congressmen arguing against the few opponents that there is in the Congress. But why don't we try this and see what happens? No. I'll tell you about that later. But it's very interesting. So we begin now with how to bring money back, silver back into circulation. The silver coin in Mexico, why did it go out of circulation? How can we reintroduce it back into circulation? Please, Mr. Villasana, are you asleep? Oh. Background. Mexico has been famous for its silver coinage for centuries. Since 1535, it's the date of the founding of the Mexican Mint, 1535. The Central Bank of Mexico has coined various silver pesos since its creation in 1925 up until the present. A constant political effort has existed to use silver in the Mexican peso up to the present time. The flaw has been that we have been engraving a nominal value on the coin. Now, with a precious metal that has to circulate along with paper, that cannot be, because paper is an inflationary medium that is continually raising prices, and if you engrave a value on a coin, you are making it, you are condemning it to a swift end. It will not be money for very much longer. Here we have first case. I would just want to give you a few illustrations. The first case here is this peso was coined from 1920 to 1945, 25 years, and this is a coin I remember from my childhood, contained 12 grams of silver, pure silver. It weighed 16 2/3 grams, so it was 0.72 fine. And as you can see from the graph, it was never circulated with its complete, on the basis of its silver value. It circulated as 1 peso, which that was the value it was given, the coin, by the mint, by the central bank, or by the government, whoever it was. And when it began, only half of the value of the peso was actually silver. The blue part represents the intrinsic value of the silver in the peso. And this coin lasted for 25 years. It was a beautiful coin. I used to treasure them, and it was very hard to spend this coin because it was very pretty and you didn't want to get rid of it. But as you can see, what happened during the 30s, the price of silver went down, and yet the coin continued to circulate. There were 458 million of these coins were minted during the 25-year period it existed. Then the price of silver went up in the mid-30s, and again it fell. Then Second World War, 1940, the early 40s, the price was completely stable of silver. You notice no variation. And then after the war, I imagine